So did you say you have 7 projects on the go right now?
7, yes.
7. Hang on a sec. That deserves some fire. Congratulations. That's and you do that all with a smile on your face and 3 babies and all that kind of stuff too.
I am doing that today. I won't say that's every day, right? As any mom knows.
Carleen, welcome to the show today. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
Well,
Yeah.
Carleen, you're always, I consider you one of the most interesting people in real estate. If you just follow your Facebook for a little bit, you're always somewhere. Like you're somewhere. Like, and the last time we connected, you were down in Arizona, or you're on some beach or in some ski hill, and it's just like you're like the most interesting person in real estate. And I'm grateful that we had finally a chance that we can connect and sit down together. So welcome here today.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was nice for us to connect. And, I love what you're doing in your space too. And so I'm happy to just be here and share and have a chat.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, where are you today?
Okay. Well, today I'm at home. I'm in my home office. Happy to be here in my control center.
Yes, in Calgary, right?
Yeah, in Calgary.
And how long have you been in Calgary for?
Oh, I pretty much spent my whole life here. Except for a few years in Ontario in my childhood years. Basically, I grew up here.
Well, it's rare to find somebody in Calgary that's kind of born and raised type of thing. Most people from Calgary have come from some other place, fell in love with something or married someone in the area or something, and then just made Calgary their home because they realize it's such a wonderful place to live. It's not all cowboys and winter out there, is it, Carleen?
No. And honestly, it is a great place to grow up, and it is a good place to raise a family. So, I'm not a fan of, I'll say, the cold weather, and I need to decide how that's going to go down the road. But honestly, it is a great city. It has so much stuff going for it. And obviously, relationships too. I've got family, so it makes, I'll be here for a little while more.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely going to talk about Calgary here because Calgary is, an off-air. And last time we chatted, Calgary is literally the star in Canada at the moment for real estate, for economics, for a lot of growth right now. It's like Calgary and everywhere else almost, right?
Yes.
And we'll definitely unpack that. But before we do, I believe that you need to be shared with a larger audience because we need more Carleen Su in the marketplace, and we need more. So, Carleen, I don't think enough people know who you are. I really do. And I think we need to distribute you and distribute your message to a wider audience. Maybe for people that aren't familiar with who you are, give us a little backstory about you, and then also kind of that moment when you got the real estate bug, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Like I said, I'm born and raised here, went to school here, grew up more in the northwest side, and attended some great schools. I went to University of Calgary. When I was in university, my mom was a bit more investment minded, and she would kind of take my red envelope money, and she would help me invest in some stocks. And so I think growing up, I kind of got that. I always thought that was a good idea. And I think I've always been kind of more financially astute and enjoyed numbers. And so I went to university under marketing, did a marketing major. But then as I got out of school and I entered the oil and gas industry, I then got into marketing in oil and gas, which is actually very finance based. So then I started doing financial modeling and all of that. So I think all of that kind of came together. And then really, I just started, I was like, I'm working now. What should I be doing? I should probably be investing in maybe some real estate. And that's how that's kind of a bit of how things got started.
So there was no, your back was up against the wall and you had desperation and you couldn't make a payment. It was more inspiration for you. Like people change because of inspiration or desperation, and you were more of what was some of the inspiration for you that kind of led you into this world of real estate?
Well, first, I think that's a neat way of looking at it. I never really thought about that, but I think that's pretty insightful, right? So for me, I guess it was inspiration. I think it was just listening to what I was drawn to. I've always liked houses, driving by them. Even now, as I grow my portfolio, it gives me pride to just add another asset make it look good, knowing that it's financially sound. But I guess, I think too, I can't remember if this was before or after, but I do remember attending a real estate seminar. It was, I think, a 3-day one. I think it was the precursor to actually the RAIN ladder. I remember learning about the RAIN ladder, but I didn't know it was actually the same organization, but before it changed ownership. So anyway, I can't quite remember if that came first or came after, but I think that just helped solidify some of my, my plan to just, why not get started in real estate earlier on. Like, I don't have to wait till I'm later. I do believe in hustling a bit. I was like, fine, I've got a great full-time job, but what else can I do? How else can I make another side income or invest it so that it actually is growing for me?
Yep. So what was the first company that when you graduated university, you went into oil and gas? Oh, go figure. Somebody from Calgary going into an oil and gas company downtown. Like how cliche, if you will, right?
Right.
What was the company?
It was called Harrison Pipelines.
Okay.
It had a few evolution of names because it got sold and bought out and stuff came Kinder Morgan, etc. But yeah, that was the first one that I started.
And when was that?
Gosh, I think that was year 2000.
Right.
Yeah,
the turn of the century.
Yes, that's right.
Wow, you just look like a baby though. It's like you've been. and I'm not going to ask you how old you are. We'll keep that one our secret. But honest to goodness, I'm quite surprised that you started in around 20 some years ago. I would have never guessed that. So you've stumbled across this world of real estate investing, and what? So did you take action like right away, or did you just did your analysis brain come out and you had to model things? And I bet you have the best spreadsheets out there possible, don't you?
You are correct. You are absolutely correct about that. Yes. And you know what? That's a good question because I didn't do it right away. And this is where, hopefully this kind of gives some other people some insight either to themselves, kind of accepting that, yes, it is hard to take that first step. Because I remember I did have some analysis paralysis, because I remember looking at a number of different properties with this realtor. And God bless him. He was actually very patient with me. I mean, he's taking around this university kid, like recently graduated kid all around, showing me lots of different properties. And luckily we had been focusing on suited properties, which we can probably get into later. But I think that was a good thing. My memory is a bit fuzzy. I can't remember if I initiated that or what, but anyways, but I do remember going around quite a bit. And I know after a while, he actually did get a bit frustrated because it was taking a while. But, you have to actually be comfortable. But then what I've also learned is you also have to take action. So, to answer your question, yeah, you have to know enough to kind of, and then maybe it's actually after losing one, like the one that got away, that then you're like, okay, the next one, I'll be ready. And so I feel like that was kind of like my very first start.
So you bought so was it a personal residence that you bought first, or did you buy a revenue property first?
It was a revenue property. So I'm like, I've got Chinese heritage. And so we do still live with family members and stuff, like with the family until we get married. And so at that time, honestly, it was just, okay, where can I put my money in an investment property? And I bought one in kind of like inner city northwest neighborhood of Calgary. It was suited. It was kind of like, even the same type of property I would buy now, like 2 or 3 bedrooms up, 2 bedrooms down.
And do you still own that place?
No.
Okay.
So what happened there was it was probably pretty good timing when I started. So I started, I think when I did get that, it was in 2002. And if anybody lived in Calgary, remembered, that was pretty much the start of the boom that happened in Calgary, where the properties doubled basically within 2 to 4 years. And so I was a young landlord. I did the landlording thing for 2 years, took over a property as well as a tenant, and it was intimidating. He was a rougher, older guy. And here I was, like a young lady trying to tell him what the rules were. in some things. And that was fine. Like I learned things there, brought some students into the basement unit 2 and ran it for a while. But I do have some interesting stories.
Yeah. So you literally just prescribed to just do it and put not just toe in the water, but both feet in the deep end of the pool and figure it out as you go. So you kind of did you do the whole self-management thing? You bought it. Did you have some help with the first property, or were you able to buy it on your own? How did that go?
Yeah. Okay. No, I did have help. My parents helped me come up with some of the down payment money, and I'll always be grateful. And I think, that just shows me that, if you can give your kids a hand up, it can get them so much further right at the start. But, in a way that's well. So yes, I got help with the down payment, and then I just managed it and everything all by myself. So basically just kind of understanding the landlord rules, the Alberta Tenancy Act, coming up with the lease and, the type of policies you have to put in place so that you actually aren't run by your tenant, but instead, you set the guidelines of how things are going to go.
Yeah.
But
it's funny how, and there's an old saying as, there's a couple ways on how to learn how to do to manage a property. And that's number one is go through the time and effort to learn it yourself, or have the tenant teach you. Right. And that having the tenant teach you property management is the more expensive of the two, by the way.
It is.
So you bought that place in 2002 on the run was starting to go up. And now it sounded like you had a little bit of a pause for a couple of years. Tell us about the journey.
Yeah. Like I think, I was doing all this while I was still working. I was, getting into my job, trying to, learn the ropes of that, doing that full time. And then just kind of had this on the side and I would try to manage it and really just kind of doing the things that I think as they came, because you have to deal with things. And, it wasn't always fun. I remember distinctly, I did have a midnight move from that first tenant where, I come in, I'm like, hey, where's the rent? It's not coming. I go there. It's like, oh, they're gone. And they left some nice beat up furniture for me to take away. There's that. I had rented out the basement to a group of students, maybe just 2 or 3. And they had subleased the parking stalls that I had, and I didn't even know. So these are all funny things that, looking back, it's like, oh boy, like.
Yeah, and interesting for some perspective. If people hear the term midnight move and an Alberta landlord go, oh, it's horrible as a midnight move. If you were renting in Ontario or British Columbia, you go, thank God, a midnight move. They left. Right.
Yes, so true.
Right. So it's I often joke, and I belong to a couple Facebook groups of managers and so just to keep my finger on the pulse of things. And I often sit back and I go, gang, Ontario, Alberta landlords, we have it so good compared to other jurisdictions. Like when somebody's telling me that they haven't received rent for 13 months and they still don't even have a hearing date, and the tenant's living in the place and holding up a sale, and they literally can hold up a sale because they won't let people in, and they're tanking the values of the property. But anyways, we could go on and on and on about that. So when did you buy your next place after that first foray? It didn't scare you, obviously, because we're talking. Yeah. When was the next place, and what did you do?
Well, I should tell you what happened to that place, because I think that does make a difference. So what happened was after, the market got really hot. And the value basically doubled in those 2 years that I had held it. And so at that time, I was like, well, how do we unlock this value? I'm like, well, I guess I'll have to sell it. Okay, we all know we can go refinance that property. We can pull out our cash. It says my internet is unstable, so I hope that it's not frozen.
Well, we had a little it was a little glitch, but it's still going now. We're still okay. Yep.
Okay. So we know now that anybody that wants to unlock the value in the equity, we can get that. We can go refinance that. We can pull that money out by getting a new mortgage. Well, back then I didn't know that. So I thought, well, I'll just sell it. And yes, I did end up selling it for double the amount. So back then it was 200. I think I bought it for 220 and I ended up selling for 440 or something like that. and did pay a chunk of capital gains. And I did take a little bit of a break from the landlording, because at that time it was like, oh, okay, like this investment made sense. I did well. I did use some of that money to put into stocks, and I didn't, and maybe help with a car payment, but I didn't necessarily roll it right into another investment. I did, I was asking myself, do I want to continue being a landlord? I wasn't sure of that, because really I was working full time. That was my career. You go to school for all these years and you get a job that's good. You're like, well, then that's what I should be focusing on. Right. And so I did take a bit of a break, I think. And instead there was actually, let me think about this. There was, what year was that? Yeah, I did take a bit of a break. And then it wasn't until 2006 I bought my next investment property.
Now, here's one of the things you'll find is real estate investors, once you start acquiring properties, like like you're going out shopping for furniture, and we'll get into that in a second here with Carleen more in detail of this. Sometimes the memory gets a little foggy about the ones that going on there. It's just going, and then all of a sudden, sometimes people actually associate their purchases to baby number 1 came at this property, baby number 2 came here, and stuff like that. So you dove back in, you bought another place. Give us the story about how you started growing after that, because obviously the reason why we're having, and we'll get to the end here in a bit, but you're in this business full time and you have a substantial portfolio now. So it started slow, but it was starting to build some momentum along the years, wasn't it?
It was, and I think if I look back at what even I'm telling you, it does start slow, because you don't have that confidence and you don't have the data points quite yet to say, hey, now go at it full force. You should, proceed somewhat cautiously, if that's kind of like, at least some advice. But always stopping at, you still got to take action. So anyways, you're right. I did start rather kind of like that. Like I wasn't like, I need to buy 10 properties at once. I'll tell you what made a difference too was I started then, I was happy with just, 2 or 3 properties. I was like, okay, that's good enough. It's just at least helping my money work for me, I suppose. But it wasn't until I decided to read a few books, which were Don Campbell's books. I think it was in 2011, get back into real estate after my second child. And I was like, I felt like I had the energy, the time, and not necessarily the time, at least the interest to get back into it.
Nice.
And I think from there, I guess I would say is sometimes you really have to work with your life and the times and the seasons of your life. Like, what I've learned is honestly, real estate will always be there for you. There's so many things about real estate, so many avenues, so many strategies that you can take on, but it has to be right for your life at the time.
Yep. I agree. It's funny. I was just recently asked a question on another podcast I was on, and they asked the question is, tell us about your story about how you got started. And I answered it a different way than I normally would answer it. I said, which version of me do you want me to tell you the getting started story of? And they say, what do you mean? I go, well, in my personal opinion, within real estate, I'm on version 4.0 of my business, of what I'm doing. And I said, which version would you like? The version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, or 4.0, right? And I think we all have different elevations and different versions of what we're doing. So, for you, if I'm kind of paraphrasing your story, version 1.0 was kind of getting that first place in Calgary and learning to cut your teeth. And then version 2 was, selling it and moving on to next. And then babies came along and, life got in the way. And then version 2 and 3 was you're starting to buy more at scale. What version of your story would you think you're on right now?
Okay, so if I was going with that, I think I'm at version 5, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah.
5.2 or 5.50 or where are you?
Gosh, I've never even thought about that, but it is definitely a continuous evolution. I've been learning and growing so much. And I'm so excited that it's not going to end here.
Yep.
totally is not. And so, I'm already doing something new even this year, even as I've had some focus, that there's so much opportunity. And I have to apologize to, maybe your audience. For some reason, my internet has been unstable for the last week, and I do not know why.
Well, I know why, is because all of those 50,000 people that are moving to Calgary, and they're starting to tap into the same pipe of all that kind of stuff too. And somebody was like, it's quite ridiculous what's going on there. But I do want to, and I know you're being really humble here, Carleen, to be honest, with your story. When did you really start going for it? Like, when did you transition out of work, and when did you start building and developing and adding portfolio, and you're adding properties at scale here? When did that pivot happen for you?
So that pivot definitely happened probably in the 2019, 2020. So even though I had been doing this for a while, even though my first property was literally 20 years ago, I would say that grew quite a bit more when I ended up not continuing with oil and gas and actually saying, hey, I'm going to do this full time and doing this. But I will say, this is version 5, because version 4, there was a period that I didn't talk about. I'm not going to take, but I will say, you get a bit more confident, and I acquired, 6 or 7 personal properties. But it wasn't until really over the last few years when I said, I'm really going to commit to this. And also helping other people do this is when I really then started getting more traction and more personal direction too on where I want to go.
Awesome. No better time than right in the middle of COVID to just grow and scale. And when did you leave your work? Was it around that same time?
I think it was near, I think the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. So I had 1 year to kind of just also, take a look at, where do I want to grow my portfolio? So still at that time, I knew I wanted to go do more, but I didn't have a clear plan yet. I was still trying to figure out at that time, how do I grow this? If I am going to help other people, I have to then be open to working with other people and the other people's money. At that time too, to be honest, I was also wondering, I had this desire to coach too. And that kind of, I guess there was 2 objectives that were kind of fighting each other. And so I think it was in 2019 that I decided, no, I really want to do focus on real estate. And there's a reason why. Because with investing, I just feel like it's an asset. And we always hear about how it's about time in real estate and not when you get in. And so when I did decide to focus on real estate investing, then I was able to grow that portfolio.
Well, and I'm going to unpack something you just said there. And I want to hear from you kind of the mental gymnastics that you maybe have went through or not. Maybe you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
You said something that you really didn't have the plan formulated, but you dove in with both feet. From my understanding, you have a little bit of an analytical brain and things like that. And when we had our previous conversation, you're talking about forecasting and financial models and modeling this building costs and that. And I would imagine you're very detail orientated on the numbers. How did somebody who's really analytical and detail on the numbers make that transition without having a plan, like a fully formed plan in place? Mm-hmm. How did you do that?
Good question. I think if I look at how I usually proceed, even when I worked in oil and gas, even though I was number focused, I was never that type of person where I was like, this is my 5 or 10 year goal, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. I was what I was good at though was always knowing when I've kind of hit that thing. I was never complacent, and I always felt like I always knew when to take that next step. So it could be like, okay, I feel like maybe I need another challenge or a different role, or I'm going after the next raise. But it wasn't like I needed to hit a certain number or a certain thing down the road. So in that same sense, I felt like I did know in my gut. No, I won't say I didn't know for sure, but I did feel in my gut that I should be doing what I was like really did love, like that I had an interest in, but it wasn't a sure thing. I did have a lot of doubts. There's no voice that said, this is what you're meant to do. I can say that now quite confidently that this is the place I should be in. But back then it wasn't like that. And, there were days when there were insecurities, or there were just not sure. But you work through it, because once you'd always take that next step, whether it's like, okay, well, what's that next investment? Or, hey, what's the next, I'm looking, what's the next offer I have to put out? Or what's the next tenant? By then, you just find yourself, you've moved.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing, gang, is it's for everybody, it's different. Everybody has a different process they go to. I was working with a client out your neck of the woods, and for the longest time, and by on the surface, like the assets, the properties, the other businesses, all this kind of stuff, it was all in place. Like everything was in place. And I said, when you handed in your resignation letter, he just would, like, he just wouldn't do it. And then on some cases, I have some other people say, when you handed in your resignation letter? And they're going, oh, tomorrow. And it's just like, I go, no, well, let's put a plan in place. They go, who cares? What plan? They drop the plan, right?
Right.
So everybody's different. And that's why I just wanted to have that conversation, because sometimes, sorry to steal a Tony Robbins here, is success leaves clues. And I'm just kind of wondering about what your process was to do this. And I imagine it just was, you were just following something that you loved to do, and you wanted to do it at a higher level. And you just said, now's the time this is the next step. Was that maybe a fair way of saying it, or you tell me?
That's probably a more concise way, because I will say, I do tend to kind of ramble a bit, but I think what it was I did sense, like, I did listen to myself and just sense that it was the right time. I think, I'm leaving it out, but it's because I had come back from mat leave after my third child. And every time I came back from mat leave, I was getting further and further away from the kind of role, like from feeling like it was the role that I was meant to spend time in, and also people, when you have children, you do kind of, there's a fight for your time, because it's like, well, if I'm spending time here, I'm not spending time there. So what that meant, that doesn't necessarily mean it made spending time away bad. It just meant that the value of that time was so much higher, and I had to think carefully about where I was spending it.
Right.
So, and every time I came back from that leave, I was kind of getting a bit further away from where I wanted to be, because as anybody, like a career woman, anybody, it's like you take a step back every time you go on. There are sacrifices there, and for me, happy to make those for my kids. There's no doubt there, but that gave me the opportunity to reassess whether that was right for me.
Yeah, I would say, and I'm not going to steal your words for you, I would actually surmise each baby that came, you took a step forward to your true purpose and calling. You didn't take a step back. You actually you actually walked forward into something, and you just got clearer around what's most important to you. And what's most important to you is your family, your time, serving and helping others. And each baby that came on board, you could let go of the job. You could let go of that because you were walking into your purpose.
Yeah. And I think, it's so funny, because at the time you just don't really notice that though. And so I just really empathizing with a lot of women where there is that struggle. It's like, but what I really propose now, honestly, is that it doesn't have to be a fight for one or the other. I really feel like no matter what, whether you're in the workplace, whether you're working from home, whether you're, have your own business, you can still make it work, but you have to know what balance is right for yourself. And you have to then think about it in a way that allows yourself to flourish in that way. If you do have that struggle, and you're not present, well, then you're always feeling like you should be doing better on one side or the other. But and when I look back, I missed the part where, in between this last growth, like version 5.0, we'll say around 4, where I had my second baby, even ran actually. I was an accidental fast food owner, to tell you the truth. I'm not going to go, that could be a whole other thing. So I'm just saying that happened while I was on mat leave with my second child. But then coming back, that's when I started growing a few of my properties, but I also then invested in some larger limited partnerships, and I was a limited partner. So that was a way where, you can still go after your goals of investing and growing your wealth, but you don't have to always do it in the way that you think. And so looking back, as I look through the different versions, I did have different investing strategies. that was right for that time.
Yep. Now, here's the thing: is it's funny how sometimes when you reflect and tell your story a little bit, it's almost like the analogy I use is like your children in many respects. Is every single day with the kids, you don't see them growing every day.
Yeah.
But then when you actually take a look back, or maybe uncle or somebody who hasn't seen the kids for 6 months to a year, oh my goodness, they're growing like weeds. Look how big they are and stuff like that. So it's funny how within our journeys is sometimes by just zooming out, looking at it from a bigger picture, you can see the growth and the versions that you've gone through. I want to pivot here shortly into kind of Calgary and a little bit what's going on there, and then also kind of what you're doing. But if we were to zoom to kind of what you're doing today, like what does your portfolio look like today? If you don't, I don't know, how do you measure your portfolio? You measure by dollars on assets under management or doors or things like that. What are we looking at today for you?
I guess I measure it by, door growth. I guess doors. I'm at 85 now, but also, the dollars transacted. And for me, most of my portfolio is, I don't do as much buying and selling. I'm a believer in kind of buy and hold. I like that strategy of mortgage pay down, letting the market appreciate. So I've transacted on now 20 million, 85 doors. It's growing also as well with the developments that I'm doing. So, yeah.
Carleen, just hang on a sec here. First of all, in any circle that you're going to mostly be in, if you went and sold somebody you've done $20+ million and you've got 85 doors and your stuff like that, the comment is, holy crap, right? It's like sometimes we're humble Canadians, like 85 doors. Carleen, hang on, we got to get some fire here. You're bringing the fire here, right? And that's fantastic. Like, honest to goodness, from that first property that you bought, that you didn't know what you were doing with rough biker guy. Now, I don't know if he was a biker guy or not. I just made that up. But that's a fun way to tell the story, is tell the story as this biker guy, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, to get to a point where it's 85 units and, $20+ million assets under management, and I honestly think this is just the tip of the iceberg for you. You're just getting warmed up. You're in like the second inning of a 9-inning ball game here. So I know most of us are the hardest on ourselves, and we know we don't pat ourselves on the back, but I'm patting you on the back. So Carleen, you can do me his favor, take your right hand, put it in the air, put it on your left shoulder, and go pat, 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 pat.
Looks more like a high five there, but yeah, thank you. Yes. I appreciate that.
So congratulations, first and foremost. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that story. And is there anything in your story that maybe if you've been doing a few of these, that maybe you haven't told the story of something of a story that you haven't told about your journey that you would think would be of value for somebody listening here today?
Honestly, I mean, I will say, it's the power of being surrounded by people that are doing what you do. So I would say, this is how I met you, Russell, was when I did join the RAIN network. And, you guys used to hold the monthly meetings and the conferences, I think every quarter or something. And those were for me the change, because, when you're just off on your own, life gets busy and you're just like doing your work thing, doing your family thing, and doing the real estate thing when you have time. But when you actually put yourself in a network and you have kind of specific time dedicated to a certain topic, such as real estate, it really does help you grow. I mean, one of the key things that I learned when I was part of that network was that you have to run it like a business. And I really did embrace that concept, because truly, I really, even now when I help people and I talk to people about real estate investing, it's like your own mini business. You are you are an entrepreneur. Yes, go have your career and have all the benefits of all of that. But if you run kind of like a side business as a real estate investor, like there's so much freedom in knowing you can rely on yourself, or you have another source or another avenue to support yourself and your family. It gives you confidence in yourself, knowing that you can figure things out and make things happen, and not just be directed from the CEO of and saying, having that flow come down to you. It's like you're directing how that goes. Yeah. I just wanted to say that being in that network helped.
No, that's awesome. Like it really, truly is who you surround yourself is the altitude that you'll take things to. And it's time, sometimes you get into different circles as you go on those versions and you enter and go into you have a different seat at a different table, if you will. And it's okay if you transition from one table to the next table because that's the direction you want to go. And that's totally fine. All right. So two lines of question. Not question. I don't want to. I'm inquisitive. I'm going to be an inquisitor here of the questions. 2 lines of conversation I like to get into. I always like to get a pulse of what's going on in all the markets across the country, and I'm fairly up to speed with what's going on in Calgary and area. But I always like to get people's perspective that are there. Like, so if someone came to you and said, "Carleen, I've heard something's going on in Calgary," like, what's your best answer to somebody about what's happening on the boots on the ground in Calgary right now?
Well, there's definitely things happening. Like if you take a look around, going up, not necessarily downtown high rises. That's downtown high rises is not downtown, but all around in the neighborhoods, you're seeing construction. Infills are going up. Even as like a landlord, I'm getting a lot of interest on I don't even have that many units available, but when they do, I get a lot of interest. And now, yes, the rents have been going up to kind of meet that demand as well. So that's what I've been seeing.
Yeah, and it's just what is your best? Why are people moving to Calgary in your opinion? Why do you think people are moving there? Like you can definitely feel the vibe and the pulse on the street, and you see the Tim Hortons line is now 25 cars deep and stuff like that. Right. Why are people moving into Calgary?
Well, Calgary, you're asking about Calgary. I will say specifically, like I do invest in Calgary as well as Edmonton. Yep. But I think,
and we'll talk about Edmonton as well. Okay. So
I think it's affordable and things are happening. Like the jobs, the vacancy rates are going down because there are more demand. People are coming here for jobs. I will say, it's not like how it used to be, but at the same time, all of the industries, things are picking up for sure. And partly that has to do with how expensive it's gotten in all the rest of Canada, right? It's just natural that when you get priced out of a market, as somebody who may be making a little less and you're like, you just can't afford it. You're going to look to another place where there are jobs that you can actually afford to raise your family. And I think that really is why.
Yeah. And no, don't get me wrong. Like I'm sitting here and I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. I phoned on a listing on a property out in my area, and I just, sometimes I just like having a conversation because sometimes I might be missing something. And I was asking the question of the guys. I go, who's buying these places? Like they're, $2 million side by side duplexes and in the Lower Mainland. Like who's buying them? And he goes, well, they're move-up buyers, people that have maybe bought condo and cash in equity and they're moving up. And I go, okay, got it. Well, who's buying those condos that are $600,000 to $800,000? And he goes, well, most of it's, people, family money getting into the first-time home buyer. And I go, so you tell me that somebody has to die in order for you to get a down payment in order to stuff like that? Now, I could be wrong, and maybe I'm just looking at it completely wrong, but if a market is at 140% affordability, right, who's buying the first-time home? Who's the first-time home buyers? And they're getting completely priced out. They're literally sitting there. I make $30 an hour working a really good job. And in all intents and purposes, that's a fantastic hourly wage. I have $100,000 from family and grandparents. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have down payment. And they're going, well, how do I afford a $700,000 mortgage payment on a $30 an hour job? And then I sit there and I go, well, let's take a look over here, what you can get for that same $800,000 in Edmonton. You can actually get a house with multiple rental helpers, and you could probably be into it for less money, and you probably would be into it for $500 to $1,000 in payments a month at the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I think people are coming here to live because the opportunity is there to have a living, right? Where not your last dollar goes to the mortgage. The industry, like the companies are doing better, so they can afford to pay you to come.
Yep.
And then also, what's kind of nice is there are investors that are investing here now too. So you not only have the competition from people that literally just want to move here for themselves, but you also have investment dollars here.
Yep.
Because it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, we are not in a real estate bubble here at all. If anything, you could be quite confident that you're entering pretty much at the low. And, you can't necessarily say that elsewhere. There could be, more growth in these other markets, but it's also kind of scary not knowing where you are in that curve.
Yeah.
I think for all those reasons, that's why right now Calgary and Alberta is quite popular.
Yeah. Now I 100% agree. Now, do they kick you out of Calgary when you say that you prefer Edmonton over Calgary in investment? Like, do they make you turn in your Calgary card if you say that you? Now it might be 1 and 1A. I don't know, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. But if you had a given a choice, would you pick Calgary or Edmonton right now?
Okay, that's a hard question.
Okay,
I will say that's a very hard question because I really like both, and they both have their benefits.
Yep.
They have the overall Alberta benefit of being, landlord friendly, already at the low end of kind of like the price curve that I think we'll be seeing. For all of those reasons, it's like it'll be between the two, but they're just different. Like Edmonton is a bit more blue collar, but it's got a more rounded industry, with government and healthcare, more secondary services, oil and gas services, whereas, Calgary is more like white collar and head offices. They have been promoting it to be business friendly. And so they are diversifying as well into like more technology businesses. But overall, they both have their pros, and I am almost equally invested in both.
Wow. Good politician's answer there, Carleen.
It's true.
Well, I'm not. I 100%. I had a big smile. For those in audio, had a big smile on her face. Carleen gets to keep her Calgary residence card, and she actually gets to be invited up to Edmonton every once in a while too. So,
right.
But you hit the nail on the head at the end. Is you are equally invested in both. And if somebody came up to me and said Calgary or Edmonton, I put out a video a little over a year ago, and I was very, very clear on the direction I need to go. A year later, I look back at it as I would have done better in Calgary over the past 12 months. But now what do I recommend today? Like today going forward, that I would stick to my original thesis over a year ago at that time. But I was wrong. Over the last 12 months, Calgary did phenomenally well over the last 12 months, and Edmonton, lagged behind. And I'm just be honest with that. But at the same time, where Calgary goes, Edmonton typically follows. And if you want to be on the lower part of that growth curve, if you want to see what's going to happen to Edmonton, just take a look at Calgary. And I believe that that's where that's going. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Right.
I'll get off my soapbox.
No, but I think that's a good point. But then also, I will also add that it depends on what your strategy is too, as well. So, I was actually investing in Calgary for quite a while. I still balanced that with, some in Edmonton through a number of years. But it wasn't until I started really looking into the bylaw changes and the opportunity to kind of add density in the inner city neighborhoods that I was first focused in Calgary. But through COVID, when the costs were rising, but the rents had not, I had to put a pause on that strategy because I was like, hold on, like it makes more sense to do these 8-unit stacked townhouse builds in Edmonton because for the same amount, for a lower cost, I'm actually getting better valuation, or at least the same valuation there. Whereas in Calgary, it cost more, but the rents hadn't yet increased enough to actually support the higher price of the building to then, execute on my plan to build these purpose-built rentals. And hold them for the short term. So that's why you have to kind of really look at, the market, what's happening then. And it does fluctuate.
Yeah. And really, if I can summarize what you said is your capital goes farther in Edmonton at the moment. You can get more for similar capital. and you have a potential for an income bump on rents, which maybe haven't done the growth curve like Calgary has had. So buy it cheaper, have potential to rent it for more. So in my opinion, that makes good sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think if anything, it just shows you like you have to be kind of like, you have to kind of pivot. You have to really be in touch with what's happening, because I could have gone ahead and I could have built when the prices of construction were almost doubling, but it wouldn't make any sense. And I would never do anything like that, especially if I am working with investors. But now take like a year later, the rents in Calgary have gone up 25%. And now I'm like, hold on. Yes, Calgary is more expensive to get in, but now these rents are supporting the valuation I would want to see in doing a development.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I 100% know what you mean. So I guess to really summarize that answer, if an opportunity in Edmonton came along and an opportunity of Calgary came along, your answer would be yes. How do I buy both?
That's right. Absolutely.
How's that for a better answer, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, awesome. Well, so are you okay if we dive down a little bit of the infill development? Like, here's the thing: is that could be an entire conversation in and of itself, and we literally could put a program together for 20 hours, and we still wouldn't even scratch the surface. It's a deep onion to unravel in that whole world of development. So, what is your model that you do? Do you go by like an infill lot and then you rezone it, redevelop and build and then own, or do you buy the end product? Like, to talk us a little bit about your process of doing infill properties.
That's exactly what I do. So basically, I think I was seeing a little bit of these like townhouse complexes being built, and together with actually an architect friend of mine, we were like, this is really a market, like something that we can get into and really go further with, because yes, there's a whole bunch of like, you can still invest in real estate and do the single family houses, suited ones, even fourplexes. But this was really an opportunity that I think was kind of untapped, because the city at that time, they were a bit slow. Edmonton was actually faster, but they were making some rule changes in their land bylaws, and so what they did was make it easier for people to actually change the land designation from a single family. In Calgary, the government had made it easier for the development of multi-unit buildings, where there once used to be like a single family house. So what that would require is you would have to put in a land redesignation application. You have to then support that location, it made sense for them to approve of that higher zoning, that higher density. But again, only doing that with certain lots that would likely get the approval. You're not going to go around and buy lots and then do this application if the chances of that you weren't unsure. When I do this plan, I know what I'm doing. I know which lots to target. Yep. And so that's what I've been doing. So I would buy a lot with an existing house. Usually I don't do that much work with empty land. It just kind of mitigates your risk a bit. You can still rent it while you do your regulatory stuff, and then get approval, get your development plan in, construct. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, it's funny. It's like, I've lots of people ask, and I've been asking a lot of questions about this too, is like, so what can you do? It's almost like, it's a difficult question to answer, is because each one can almost be something a little bit different in many respects. Like you can, what am I trying to say? So you can get it to a point where it makes sense that you can put on a 6-unit here, an 8-unit here. You can turn this lot sideways and put on 4 towns with lower suites. Like the key thing is that being able to just pivot, and it's almost like a game of Lego in many respects. I'm seeing like that. It's like, how many building blocks can you put on here? And the good news is, the cities in Alberta are favorable for adding density. Now, go figure. Go think about that, right? So in many jurisdictions across the country, it's like density is like everybody talks density, but nobody actually, no local municipal government wants to actually do anything about it.
Right. And I would say, it's taken Calgary a while too. Like I would say, they did start with the legal basement program quite a number of years ago. And now they really are pushing for that. And they've made some recent changes that really will allow, and they give you really specific parameters. If you're within 600 or 400 meters from an LRT, or if you are on the main street, so they give you really specific parameters to work with so that maybe you then know what to target. And number two, once you find a lot, I love that creative aspect. It really is about finding the best and highest use and maximizing that lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the best way I could describe it is, they're very good with giving you the rules of engagement for as is what you can work with. Now, here's the cool thing is what you potentially can work with is fantastic, and it might just plug and play. And then they're also, reasonably favorable if you do need to make some changes and some pivots and some things if you're following all the right steps. But at the same time, time and money comes down to really. It can take longer to do. It takes more approvals. It takes more money. At the end of the day, pull out your checkbook is really the answer to it, right?
Yes, and figuring that out, right? Because then you're doing say discretionary versus contextual, and then you're doing, do you ask for variances or just kind of go the easy way and just,
Yeah. So what have you done? What have you done over the years? Now, I think when we first talked, I think you did your first one. Was it 2019 or 2020 when you did your first kind of conversion? And what have you kind of have bought and converted into? Maybe just give us a picture of what it looks like.
Well, done a couple of upzonings in Calgary, one to an MCG, another one into an RCG, which both of these will allow for these complexes.
So, upzoning meaning you took something that was zoned once and you reapplied to get it to a new higher zoning.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, something that you could kind of build more or bigger on.
Okay.
And then that's at that time too is when I kind of put a halt in Calgary because I was waiting for the lights to turn more green. They weren't yet. So then I moved my attention to Edmonton where the numbers made more sense. And since then I've got about 7 projects underway. It was a bit quieter last year while a lot of these projects were in the development phase with the city, with the with the planning department getting the approvals. But now this year is when they're all actually under construction.
Wow. So did you say you have 7 projects on the go right now?
7, yes.
7. Hang on a sec. That deserves some fire. Congratulations. That's and you do that all with a smile on your face and 3 babies and all that kind of stuff too, and all that good stuff as well.
I am doing that today. I won't say that's every day, right? As any mom knows, and and not just any investor knows, there are so many ups and downs, right? Yeah. I mean, we can talk about this and at a high level, and I could say this is what was done, but I mean, it is really just the individual days where you actually just cross off those tasks, make sure you know what you need to do to get you to where you are today and what you need to do for the future. So
you're not just saying you just rolled out of bed and just ta-da, here I am.
No, I will say, it does take a lot of, I would say dedication. Like I haven't really veered too much, ever since I started. I've always been pretty direct in terms of I know that real estate is going to help me with my family goals of, freedom and able to support them. But, and even looking at different strategies, it was always still very focused.
If you don't mind, and I'm not going to go into all the minutiae detail of it because we could be here forever, like I said. But obviously, if you're doing multiple projects, the numbers make sense to you, and we can go down to the penny because I imagine you have those down to the pennies. But just a typical project, like what kind of a person maybe buy a piece of land for? What can they build it for? What can they have at the end? Will these cash flow? How are you finance? I know that's a big question, and there was 7 questions in there.
But I can. And do you want me to start with Calgary, or do you want me to start with?
Whichever one you feel more comfortable talking about. Is there one that do you have a pet project that has a fun story to it?
Gosh, I mean, I don't have a pet one. There's one that I dislike the most, but I also think it might be a really good win. That was one in Edmonton where I did get quite a bit of objection from the neighborhood when I was doing but I also think that might be one of the most profitable ones, once I finish.
Well, let's talk about that one. If you don't mind, let's talk about that one.
Well, that one I'm not going to go into because that one I haven't actually yet. But I want to be able to answer your question. So let's just say in Edmonton, if you're not familiar with the market, you could get a lot, between 300 and 450. Like, it depends on whether you get it. Whether you get it and then you go through the rezoning process, or you get one already zoned for this 8-plex, I'll call it 8-plex, and then just start with the development plan. So that makes a difference in the pricing, but that's kind of a range that you can kind of expect.
Gotcha.
And to build these complexes, I would say also the prices are different between Edmonton and Calgary. All in, the cost of these projects are between 1.8 and 2. So,
and that includes the land typically, right?
That includes the land.
Yeah. Okay.
Because, there aren't that many listings available because most people building them are keeping it for themselves. Either they're developers or they do what I'm doing, where I invite investors to come in and we all hold it together.
Yep.
But really that's kind of the range that you can see. But I will bring investors in at that price, at the cost. But I've gotten completed appraisals, and they are in the 2.3, one for a larger project, even 2.6. So there is a spread there where that's why I feel like it makes sense to just hold them and be able to generate some cash and some income from it as a rental.
Nice. And what we're talking about these is a really nice brand new build of a 4-townhome project, 4 in a row with lower suites. That's
right? Yeah, that's what I do.
So essentially 8 rental units, 4 townhomes, lower suite, no strata, no condo fees. And what do you have do you have garage and parking on there as well?
I do like garage, separate bays.
Yep. Are you able to put a garden suite, a garage suite on them yet? Have you tried that route?
So we have a couple that haven't started under construction, but the plans are in as well. So you can actually make them 9 units.
Yeah. That's one of the, and I'm not, there's many things as once you dive into the bylaws and things, it's like we were talking with a builder, and he goes, Russ, that's maybe the way you read this and interpret this. He goes, but if I read this, it says this. And we're going, he goes, well, in the Eskimo language, there's 7 different ways of saying the word snow. He goes, I read it this way. And he goes, okay, well, then he got that approved. Right.
Well, and I think sometimes that's it, right? And I think there is sometimes room for that. What's that word I'm looking for? Interpretation, right? Yes. And then you want to be able to use that to your advantage. And so definitely, when you're looking at the different possibilities, like I said, you kind of want to build the most that you can because, depending on your goal, is it an investment? If it is, you want to maximize your rental revenue. Yeah.
Cool. And then, so are you at a point where you've been renting these out, and are they renting out quite nicely? Or are you at that point in the process?
Yes. I do have a couple that are rented, and they are renting nicely as per my projections, and there is demand for them. I even kind of go a bit further and I just kind of look for corporate tenants as well, because I really feel like these units are really well suited for that, in the sense that it's all in one location. It's also easier to manage as a person trying to rent out numerous units at one time.
Nice. So, okay. So you had mentioned that you bring investors in and you bring them in at the purchase of the infill lot, and then do they stay right through to the completion and the owning of the asset long-term, typically?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Yeah. So investors come in, and then, how are you financing it kind of on the purchase of the land and the construction? How do you kind of do that up front?
I haven't done it exactly the same way on each project, but you could purchase the land.
Yep.
And you could still get bank financing for that. You would put 20% down, as long as either yourself or somebody can qualify. You can hold that while you do your regulatory work. And then at the time of construction, you get that construction loan, which pays out the first land mortgage. And then you go ahead with that on draw mortgages.
Right.
Yeah.
So you do whatever it takes to kind of acquire the house to start, and then you apply for construction financing, and then you at completion you get a completion mortgage at the end, I would imagine.
Yeah, but there's various ways.
Yep.
Like, so for example, there's another one where we had our investors in, so we purchased it outright, the land. So then that way, when we actually go into construction, we probably won't need to have that much more capital required, and you can get either you can get your CMHC loans right from the start, and you don't necessarily, and then it rolls into a takeout.
Yep.
Or you can get, I've done one where I do the traditional financing construction, and then I will probably do a regular CMHC takeout. And then there's another ones where I like do the MLI select.
Yep.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm having on this podcast a good friend of both of ours, Nadeem, is going to be is coming on there. He's a wonderful resource, and he just gets it done. Like, it's just and he's very not creative. He's just he knows which product to go into where, and it's good. He's a top-notch mortgage broker in this kind of world, and he just knows how the appraisals work. He knows all that kind of stuff, and he's Albertan, and he just gets her done. It's the best way I can say it.
Yeah. For sure. And I would say, definitely when you're doing these projects, you really want to work with somebody experienced. And sometimes you can tell, talking to different people, they may have done one or two, but you really want to work with somebody, because in commercial financing, there's so many little things that come up. Requirements, like the stack of paper you sign at a lawyer's doing that is about this thick. When I'm doing a residential purchase, I can get that done and signed and everything 20 minutes. The other one takes an hour.
Yeah.
So that just shows you how much more it is. And so you want to be able to rely on somebody that can kind of guide you.
Nice. How did you know you were ready to make this transition? Did you know, or did you just jump in and just did one and decided from there? And like, how does somebody make this transition?
Okay. That's a good question. A couple of things. Okay. So for me, I'm a numbers oriented person. So when I look at investments, I don't just go by gut or anything. It really does have to make sense on paper, on a spreadsheet. And, even there, it's not a sure thing. I mean, it really is as good as your assumptions behind it, right? And your research behind it. So if I have that as a bit of a start, then it's a matter of, do you stay there where you're kind of guessing and you're just not sure? Or do you say, hey, I think this is what makes sense, but what do I need to do to get comfort around that? So then maybe on my very first one, I paid like consultation fees to people. So sometimes people feel like they have to be friends or make friends with people in the know and just try to gather as much information that they can. But what they maybe I don't see as often is that, you can go seek the professionals. You can pay them for their time. They are happy to give you the information that you need. And it's a win-win for both. And that way you don't feel obligated because maybe you were just seeking information, but you may not go with their services or, so I really think that helped me in one aspect when I was kind of looking at the legal structure of how I wanted to set up my GPLP. I will say was one of the first ones in the kind of the investor circles that kind of talk about that more. Now it's more common, and I think it's great that we are using that structure more commonly now, but I would say it wasn't as well known. So that's what I did to get comfort around the areas that I needed to understand better before I did proceed. But when I proceed, you proceed kind of taking the steps that you need to look into.
Yep. You have to learn to walk by learning to walk, right? It's one of those things, just one step at a time. And lo and behold, you blink and 3 years go by and you have 7 projects on the go. Yeah,
that's what happens. Yeah.
It's funny. It's like, I sit there and I want the recipe. And I always, in my conversation with people, give me the recipe. And sometimes the answer is just, well, Russ, the recipe is you just do it, right? No, what do you mean? That's not the recipe. Like, what do you have to do? It's one step, no, Russell, the answer is you just do it. And then the next step will appear when the next step will appear.
Yes.
And you take that action.
And I think that's the clear thing. It's not do it blindly,
Yes.
it, but it's actually exactly what you said, is that the next step will appear.
Yep.
So yeah, you take that first step because you do, you can't sit in kind of that analysis paralysis stage, and it could be literally years later and have done nothing. And then you hear people say, oh, I wish I had gone into it. No, you have to take that step.
No, I 100% agree. I would be remiss if I didn't ask, where would somebody be able to find you? Where are you hanging out on the social media airwaves and stuff like that? Where would somebody be able to contact you?
Well, I do have a business page on Facebook, and that's True Capital Real Estate. It's TRU without the E.
Yep.
I also am on Instagram, and my handle is Investor Carleen, Carleen. And I have my website, truecapitalrealestate.com.
I got it pulled up here. I was going through it earlier, and it's some high quality stuff there. You got a nice website that you've put together, and there's the team and everybody there. So well done. Looks good. And I like the I was on the current projects page. I think you need to update on some of your current projects.
Yeah, it's actually not really updated, I will say. So I'm a little embarrassed to say it's not updated.
Yeah, but you got some nice looking product there, by the way. That's some really good solid work that you're putting in place there as well. So well done. Yeah. Well done. I'm very,
thank you.
I know this doesn't maybe mean anything, but I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of all the work that you've done. And I remember multiple conversations that we've had over the years, and holy macaroni, you've grown over the years. It's like you've been from the infant to you're a leader. You're a true leader in the industry, and you're helping people, and you're giving back, and you're sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with others. And it's as inspiring as heck to see, Carleen. You've just taken something and you've just absolutely just 10x'd it. So congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, if anything, I think what's so great about real estate is anybody can get into it, and you don't have to love it like I do. Like, it is my passion. I do love it, but it really is something that's accessible to everybody. If you choose to find the right way, it will help you in your life. And for me, it has helped me grow even as a human, and just like myself, and gaining that competency. All of that is there for you if you are open to it.
Nice. Well, and I have one more final question, because I think that you can share some really cool insight here. And the final question I usually like to leave off on these interviews, and I want to be respectful of your time because I know how busy you are and how many things you got on the go, especially with 7 projects and 3 little ones and running everything is. So here's the question I usually like to leave people with is, if you had a coffee with somebody, say you and I are having a coffee right now, and I'm just feeling a little stuck. I'm just not sure what the next step is. I'm just feeling a little stuck on what action to take. What's some wisdom that you would offer to me, or just some words that you would offer to me to help me get unstuck and take the next step forward? Okay,
this is not going to be new advice, but I really do believe that this is helpful, that you have to figure out where you're stuck. And sometimes it really is just confidence. So it's not that they don't know what to do. It could have been like a whole bunch of people telling you already that you need to do it, but they still don't take it. It's because they're lacking confidence. When you don't believe in yourself, it's hard to say, just do it. So I get that. So that's where, if you are that person, then you really should reach out for help. So, there's value in getting a coach, and, having a coach that you can borrow their confidence, and they will hold your hand. And you know what, whether it's 2, whether it's 5, whether it's 20 or that value you will gain back in real estate by taking action. I guarantee you that. Don't let that stop you from doing what you need. And if it's not that, then find what way can help you take that action. Maybe it is partly being part of like a network or a Facebook group for a while. And maybe that's exactly what you need. Maybe that takes a little longer, but it's there. So don't stay stuck.
Wow. Woo-wee, hang on. It's getting hot in here.
I don't know. I mean, it's not new advice, but I really, really think it's true. Or that's what I really would say.
No, you brought the fire today, Carleen. So well done. Like honest to goodness. And I wasn't joking at the beginning when I said that this is probably just the tip of the iceberg for you. Like I'm sitting back here, I want a bucket of popcorn, and I'm going to start. I want to see what the next version of version 6 and 7 is for Carleen Su, because it's going to be whatever it is going to be done with style. It's going to be done with grace, and it's going to be done with paying it forward to help others. So well done. Well done.
Thank you. I look forward to that too. And yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing you too.
Yep.
I mean, you're paving a path too, and all of like the knowledge you're sharing with everybody. So, you know, the feeling's mutual.
Right on. Okay, gang, have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.
You're obviously somebody who takes action if you made it right to the end of this video, so you should be rewarded with a couple extra bonuses and goodies. Number 1, make sure you subscribe. There will be a button below here to subscribe so you don't miss an upcoming video. And over here, to continue your journey going forward, there'll be a hand-selected playlist and a hand-selected video, just perfect for what you're looking for. All right, gang, continue the momentum. Let's go!